This is yet another MBA GOAT, a podcast featuring conversations with the greatest of all-time MBA alumni from the Naveen Jindal School of Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. We are here to celebrate the outcomes of graduate management education and to identify remarkable examples of how the MBA program here at the Jindal School has transformed the lives of our alumni. Now, here's Lisa Shatz, Assistant Dean for the Jindal School's MBA programs. Take it away, Lisa.
Hey, you guys. Welcome to another episode of yet another MBA GOAT. We are here today with Tasha Okulate, who is a sales strategy senior manager at Frito-Lay, a relatively recent graduate of the evening cohort program at UT Dallas, and a new mom. Welcome, Tasha.
Hey. I'm so excited.
So, Tasha, you have had a really busy couple of years, graduating in 2019, getting promoted and having a baby, being on the road. How are you juggling all of that?
And you say a busy couple of years. I started the program in 2017 after getting married and getting a puppy. So from 2017 to the 2-year evening cohort program to a couple of promotions, I think 2 in 2021, and then the baby came in January of 2022. It's been busy, but you talk about how do I start to juggle it? It's being aware of what my triggers are when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. And my husband mentioned last night, hey, I can tell you have a lot going on because you won't do any work and you're just cleaning everything. So being cognizant of what those things are for me, when I start to feel things bubble up, it means I need to sit down and reprioritize, make sure what the focuses should be are the focuses, and then start to manage everything else from there. So it's an ongoing process, but I think I'm at a good place right now.
Well, you are certainly making us proud with all of your accomplishments at Frito-Lay. And I will add that you did something very similar to me in that you and your husband went through the program at the same time. One in the full-time MBA program, one in the evening cohort. And in our case, I went through the evening program and my husband went through the full-time. So I know what it's like to have MBA like your entire life. And there's good and bad to sharing that. But what was it like having you both do an MBA program at the same time?
Busy. It was interesting. You would think at the same school that our journeys would have been similar, but it was very different. For me, I was, of course, working and I traveled for work quite a bit. So my days were, hey, I might be driving or on a plane trying to get back to class. I distinctly remember taking naps in the parking lot from when I'd park till, my class would start. And then I'm going to class until 9 or 10 o'clock and then I'm getting home. My husband was full time, so he wasn't working. And so he had a lot more time, structured time, I would say, dedicated to his studies or, some of the extracurriculars he was doing. At times I would get jealous, right? Because he's going to the gym, he's, in the suit and tie going to another career fair. And I feel like there were moments where I had it all together and there were moments where maybe work was more demanding at a point in time or school was more demanding. And so it took some time, but I think we both started to be really intentional about, hey, how do you spend time together with school? Because we were like at times passing ships of the night. So what we started to do was the breakout rooms on the second floor, right? We would go and find a breakout room. And even though we may not have been talking, right, it was that time we got to sit together. So that would be our time to study. We'd be up there on the weekend, or he's more of the, your engineering, math-based type. So he'd help me with the stats class and accounting. I'm very much more sales, marketing. So he's like, this marketing stuff makes no sense. So in that respect, we were able to kind of feed off of each other to get us both through those 2 years.
Yeah. And being that close certainly wasn't new for you because you met at work, right? So
we did.
You've actually had really for a long time, your interests in what you're doing were very intertwined above and beyond your relationship.
They were. We were both Pepsi interns. He actually went to SMU for undergrad. I went to the University of Oklahoma. And we interned together. So that's 10 years ago this year. So we've never necessarily, we haven't had our entire relationship in the same city, but I think that taught us how to have lives outside of each other and interests outside of each other. So I think it was for the best. And so I think going through that grad school journey together, where it may have been more of a challenge for some people, we had been in places in our relationship before where we may not have been seeing each other every day or on the phone all the time. So we have, throughout our relationship, understood how to kind of things ebb and flow. I think we're both really big supporters of bettering ourselves. So this was something we knew was going to be a sacrifice, a time commitment, but it's something that we both wanted. And that really is what drove our decisions on why I did the evening cohort program and why he did the full time. I was at a place in my career where the MBA wasn't for me. I wasn't looking to make a complete career change. I was in a good place in my career, but was wanting to see it develop further. So to me, it made sense, hey, I can continue on in my career path, my career journey, and, still work and go to school. For him, he was really looking to pivot and do something completely new. He was oil and gas consulting, engineering, and he was looking to pivot into finance. So for him, it really makes sense to completely remove himself from the workforce and then fully delve into the MBA program. But that can be scary, right? When you're talking about going from two salaries to one and, Lisa being the breadwinner, so to speak. So it took planning. It wasn't a decision that we jumped into after one or two conversations. This was intentional budgeting, planning, knowing what that time commitment was going to be. And so I think for us, it's what worked, and no regrets at this point on the decisions we made to take the programs that we did. And, the small amount of time it was in those 2 years, although it felt long, has really paid off for both of us in our careers.
Well, and it's funny because that you use the word intentional, because the fact that you were so intentional in your decision is probably why you were so good at the program and managing all that, because part of kind of being that strategic mind and thinking through things is being intentional about the decisions you make in business, and you were doing the same in your personal life. So I think that just kind of speaks to why it was probably such a good fit for you. Let me touch on another point. So diversity. DEI is just, a huge buzzword. I think over the years, it always has been, but I think in ebbs and flows as far as how much it was just speak and how much it was really happening. And in the modern world today, I think DEI is really making a difference. I think companies are realizing that they need multiple perspectives. And as schools providing companies what they need, we need to attract more diversity. What was it about UT Dallas that made you think it was a fit? And did diversity ever play a part either in your choice or in your experience?
So as far as my choice for UTD, a number of things, played a part. One was location. I did not want to move. So, right, I'm looking in this geographical area. A portion of that was cost. I'm going to be funding this. What are the costs of the different schools and the different programs? Probably the most important thing to me was the ranking and the status of the program, right? All MBAs are not created equal. So if I'm going to go through this process, I wanted to make sure I was going to a school in my area that was top ranked. So based on those factors, you start to narrow it down and say, okay, there's maybe two or at best three schools in the DFW Metroplex that might check those boxes. So then that's when I started to do school visits, program visits, and understand, hey, what was going to be a fit for my life. When you ask, did diversity play a role? Yes, but when you start to talk about the role I thought it would play and the role it did play, it may be two different answers. So I think a lot of times when we say diversity, we're thinking race. So as a Black woman, I was going into a program, but I wanted to see diversity of students and faculty and staff. And I did see that at UTD, but what ended up playing a bigger role in my experience was everything outside of that. A lot of it was age, diversity in age. Some of the people I became closest to, I'd say like my best friend in school, I'm going to say his name because I know he wouldn't mind, Justin Sandlin, is, and I'm not going to say his age, but there's decades in between us. So this is someone in any other situation, we probably would have never struck up a friendship, but being in this program together, he was the guy when I'm, staying after class till midnight, he would stay to get work done. And I'm using air quotes there. He would stay to make sure I got to my car safely, right? These are the people that when I start to talk about who made my experience what it was, it's the people. And a lot of that was diversity in age. A lot of that was diversity in phases of life, right? We had people who had children in my cohort, which I didn't at the time. We had people who were single. We had people who were married, had people who traveled for work like I did, right? So it was that type of diversity that I think added value to my program. Each program is going to have benefits, but one of the benefits of the evening cohort for me is you get that aspect, right? You're getting a lot more of people who have worked in the workforce, right? Sometimes the full-time programs, you do have a lot more folks who are maybe coming right out of school or earlier stages of their career. I really start to learn from people who had worked a lot longer than me, maybe worked longer than I'd, even been alive. And those are some of the people that I start to feel myself drawn to, or on project work. They had a lot more real life experiences, right? That transition for me, undergrad, was very much textbook knowledge. I didn't expect grad school to be as much of, hey, this is applicable things. These are things that I'm actually touching or have seen in my day-to-day job or my classmates have seen. So that diversity really added the most value to me. And again, it's not what I went in thinking, but I think that's what it ended up being.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about diversity from that perspective, because we have so many people who come into the program and they're the younger ones and they're so intimidated. They're like, I've got all these people with 10 plus years experience, but what they don't realize is those older than average students or folks with more experience are a little intimidated too. They're not as savvy on social media. They don't know necessarily all the new technology. They can't move as fast in technology. And so when they're put on teams, it's very transparent at that point what value you add. And very often it's the people who are younger that are right out of school. So they're still in that school mode. And for them, it's not a big transition to go back to, okay, this is how we're going to handle this project and this project and this project, because they've done it more recently. And then just getting up to speed on the way young people think and how they use technology for all of their problem solving. And it's a very short time into the program, usually, that those folks who are maybe a little insecure start gaining some security because they really see where that value is that they're adding.
And I'm sure if you surveyed or did a poll of the average MBA class at UTD, everyone has some kind of insecurity, right?
Yeah.
Mine, I had imposter syndrome starting to creep in. Like, am I really good enough to be here? Yeah, I could do these things in undergrad, but I haven't been in school in so long. That first time you don't do so great on a test. I had a lot of that creep in. And it's just to your point, everyone has some form of insecurity, whether, hey, I'm younger in the class, I don't have the work experience, or, hey, I haven't been in school since floppy disk. It's been a long time, right? I think it's a very common thing to have. And so that's the importance of connecting with your classmates, not just gravitating towards the people you may have known before or people who are similar in age to you, right? Getting out of your comfort zone to start to really learn from people who are not like you, whether that's race or gender or sexuality or all of these things that it could be, and starting to take in where their strengths are, that can help compensate for some of the things that you may see as weaknesses in the program.
Yeah. And that imposter syndrome is such a great experience to go through in an MBA program because it's a safe place to do it. It's a place that you can say, this is how I'm feeling and be open about it. And those folks are so much more prepared when they hit the imposter syndrome at some point in their career, which anyone who moves up quickly in the corporate world, they're going to feel that at times, right? You get a new promotion and you're wondering, am I really prepared for this? Am I ready? Well, none of us are ready for our promotions. Yeah. If we were, then we should have had them before, right? You're always stepping into something that's new and challenging and different. And so getting that kind of experience behind you and knowing what it feels like and knowing how to get out of it, I think is a great life lesson to have further on in your career.
I agree.
This episode is brought to you by the UT Dallas MBA program, top ranked nationally and in Texas. The UT Dallas MBA combines a robust core with 13 concentrations. You have an option to add a second master's degree, and your choices for that include 5 STEM designated programs. The MBA program has full-time, part-time, online, and other formats. They give you flexibility to fit your MBA education into your busy schedule. The skills and training you will receive are what top employers are looking for. For For more information, visit us online at jindal.utdallas.edu/MBA.
Okay, so let's talk about your relationship to the program since you've been out. So when you were in the program, you were an ambassador, you were a rep, super active despite all the things you had going on. So we talked about you're working and juggling that, but also you were also stepping up every time we said, hey, we need somebody to help with this or that. And even since you've left the program, still active and coming back, helping our current students. What has that done for you? And what part of alums being involved in the program kind of had an impact on you when you were a student?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. One thing for me, when I went through the program, I was actually the only Black person in my class, Black woman as well. And so that was something I wanted to make sure people saw when they come, because there is some comfort seeing people that look like you're seeing that you can identify with. Now, on my way out, that had completely changed. So even in my 2 years, the structure and again, we talked diversity, the diversity of the classes had changed so much. But I did see a lot of, African American Black students coming up to me and being able or feeling comfortable to ask those questions that I didn't necessarily have that person, right? It took me a little bit more time to get my bearings and get comfortable around people to ask the hard-hitting questions. So I wanted to be that person for people. So that was kind of one motivator of, hey, why go back and why plug in? And I think that's applicable to all alumni, right? For me, it may have been race, but for someone else, it may be sexuality and feeling comfortable with someone who's maybe in the LGBTQ plus community, or it could be, again, we talked about age. It could be being someone older or younger on the spectrum and saying, hey, what are the challenges that I may face that are unique to our group, right? That are unique to being 50 plus and going back to school, or that are unique to being a parent and going to school. So I wanted to be that representation, and that's kind of why I plug in. But I do think if you're going to put time towards something, it's mutually beneficial, right? So for me, it is still the networking. I have people who have been classmates or who have been in programs years before or after who have reached out and said, hey, I saw a job posting at PepsiCo, and do you know anything about this job posting? Can you give me any tips or pointers, right? And I feel comfortable that if I was in that position, I could lean on fellow alums to get the same information. I went to an event, this might have been right before COVID. We went to a Mavericks game and got to hear from Mark Cuban. And when do you ever get the opportunity to hear from like the Shark Tank Titan that's in our community, and still get to have fun and drinks and watch some basketball, right? So it's about the camaraderie, yes, but it's also about still being poured into at this point in my career post grad school. It's the networking at the happy hours. It's getting to see old faces, but still getting to meet new faces. So I know I listed off a number of things, so I hope I did answer the question, but a lot of it, the importance of alum getting plugged in, I really think it's, hey, you had a unique journey that no one else had, but there are portions of that journey that could pour into someone else. And you never know what that thing may be when you're walking into a room. But, I think the last thing I volunteered at was a case study competition. And the connector there ended up being someone who's in the CPG industry, right? So you never know what it is. It might be something physical. It may be something more abstract, but you have something to offer, incoming students and current students. And so that's really what's motivated me to keep that touch point.
Yeah, I think you made a really important point there too about having other folks see somebody who looks like them doing well in a program. And I think that's true for the older than average, but particularly for the underrepresented minorities. And for the years, every MBA program across the country is striving to have more African Americans, more Hispanics in their programs. But it does take groups seeing somebody who looks like them doing well. And so I really think that the answer to that admissions problem is having more people come in, do well, set an example, and have younger people see that that's a road that they can take. So I think it takes time, but I think the education system nationally is making some real strides in that. And I'm so glad to see that. We've had some amazing diversity candidates this year. And so those numbers are just ticking up. So we're really happy to see that.
I started in 2019. I think my husband started in 2020. And I said, I was one of, maybe my class was 40 or so. I was the only Black person. And then my husband comes home and said, there's 8. I said, 8? What do you mean there's 8 people in your class that are Black? And it's something that I joke about, or I say jokingly, but there really is, you want to see a place where, or be in a place where, yes, there's diversity, but you also want to know that there are people like me who, again, have similar backgrounds who are making it work or who are doing it. There's something about seeing, and for me, even it translates into corporate America, right? Seeing a regional RVP that was just put into role as a Black woman, I've never seen that. So I'm like, oh man, this is a height I didn't even think about, that now I can see myself in that position, right? Or I think that's the importance of, in corporate America, we call them these employee resource groups, but even the clubs and groups that we have at UCD, right? It's the importance of having these groups that you can identify with and see those people be successful, that look like you or who have similar backgrounds as you, in doing it. So that's something that is a passion point for me. It was in school and it continues to be in the corporate world.
Yeah. And certainly for those people, if they ever question if there's a place for them, just go look at the companies, because companies want every form of diversity and can't get enough. So there's definitely a place for everyone. It's just jumping in and taking your chance and having a little faith in yourself. One thing I tell everyone that has imposter syndrome is you might not have faith that you're right for the program, but we've been doing this a really long time. And if we're admitting you to the program, we don't do that if we don't know that you can be successful. So sometimes we have to show a little faith in someone before they get to where they have it themselves, but they generally get there. So if you look back at your experience, is there one thing that stood out particularly? I mean, obviously, you had great faculty and great classes and you use a lot of that in your day to day, but is there one experience that just stands out that there's nothing that could happen that you would ever forget?
I think the most impactful experience probably would have been the study abroad program. I didn't do it in undergrad, and a driver of me not doing it was cost and money and not thinking I could afford it. But, the opportunity came around in grad school, and, money is still top of mind. I'm in school, my husband's in school, newly married, bought a house. We didn't mention that, but I didn't want to miss that chance again. So I did the study abroad program with Dr. Habdi Waldu, and we did the Brazil 10-day trip. And so I think there was maybe a group of 10 or 12 of us, and it was so much fun. It's the perfect balance of getting the experiences of, the academia side. So we did company tours. We were going to headquarters of Natura, still have their lotion here from that trip. We did Ambev, which actually they distribute Pepsi products in Brazil. So that was a really cool experience for me. But, weaved into these, corporate tours, still getting that culture aspect. So we did a couple of days in Sao Paulo, and we did a Brazilian steakhouse. I don't think I could walk after that. We did just the museum, did a cultural museum. We did some church tours. So we really got the cultural aspect and, the business side of how do companies operate in Sao Paulo. What are some of the unique challenges that South America may be experiencing, or some of the industries that we got to see and tour and ask these questions? And then, of course, after, the formal structure or the formal event, you got to go out with classmates. So I remember we did samba dancing one night, more steak. I think I had steak almost every night.
Not a trip for vegetarians, huh?
They have some options, more alcohol, I'd say. And then at the end of that, a group of us stayed on. So after the formal, study abroad trip, a group of us went to Rio. And so I have this awesome picture with 4 of my classmates, and, we're doing the whoosh at the top of the Christ the Redeemer. So one of the best trips I've ever taken in my life. And to be able to do that, get class credit, get that exposure, right? Sometimes we get so, we think in the moment of, the cost, but, my husband was able to get some scholarships. I was able to get scholarships. And again, pinching the pennies for a few more months really was worth it in the sense to get that experience with you. So hands down, my favorite part, if anybody's taking something away from this program and go and do study abroad. Don't stress about the money, right? Talk to the program office, see what they can do to help support. But it was just probably my favorite part of the entire 2 years.
And I bet you're probably in contact and still friends with a bunch of people from your class, but I bet those 4 that are in that picture with you will be friends with forever.
Friends with, I mean, the inside jokes, we would come back and we had our inside jokes, and then the Tokyo group that went, we had a group go to Japan, they had their inside jokes, and then everybody else in the class, like, man, we should have gone on a trip, because
right,
you're hearing the stories of everyone's experiences from Brazil and all of these things, and hindsight, hindsight was 20/20 for them, or they wish they had done it. So this is me telling you, this is Tasha speaking. Hindsight, don't let that be experience. Go and take the trip and have that experience that you can't get anywhere else.
Well, I'm glad that you had that experience,
especially for those evening cohorts. Right, for me, it's one less class to take during the semester, and hey, I get just this 2 weeks to dedicate to a class and credit, and then you get to have fun doing it.
Yeah, for sure. So it's lightning round time. I'm going to ask you some questions and try not to overthink it. Just blurt out whatever comes to mind. Okay. Who was your favorite faculty member?
I'm going to say Dr. Simon Siegenthaler. He was our econ professor, and I really just liked his style. Econ for me was one of those, sometimes it would be conceptually hard for me to grasp. And so he would have games that we would play to explain these concepts. I remember one really distinctly because I won. It was like a rock, paper, scissors, and we kept going until there were 2 people left. It was actually heads or tails with a coin toss. But I just remember for that class, it was a class I wasn't excited to take, but his teaching style for me was what made him such a great professor. He was really approachable. His tests were fair, right? They weren't easy, but it was they were concepts and things that he had discussed in class and in the reading. So fair teacher, great approach to how he taught us and how we learned. And so he would be my favorite.
And a classmate that made the most impact on you?
I said Dustin, and I'm going to say him again because he was just a genuinely great guy. I mean, I said the story about, I'd study late. He would stay to study, but he would always just make sure I got to my car. He would, invite us over to meet his family. He was so proud of his kids. He was one of the folks who, when we talked about insecurities, was very vocal about his insecurity of being one of the older ones in the class, but he was also he was like the dad of the class. So, those stressful days, he would be the one to bring in lunch and be like, hey, just was thinking about you guys. And it just really had an impact on me. We still text. I let him know, when I was having my baby. We all actually, him and another classmate, we went when a classmate of ours lost her mom during the program. We all drove together and went to late. And it was those moments that show you that the importance of, bringing your full self to work, but how far compassion can go. In business, sometimes we think you have to be like this type A, iron fist leader. And, he really taught me the importance of compassion, the importance of showing others their value and really being able to be your true self. So Dustin Sandlin, hopefully I'm going to send him a text so that he listens to this podcast episode, but I still think about him. He's just had a big impact on me post-school. I learned a lot from him.
Forever friends, right?
Forever friends.
What habit, good or bad, did you pick up during the program?
Working out. I'm fairly fit naturally. I don't like working out, but having this routine of, school and work, it really got me into a groove where I was able to carve out time to work out. So I remember I would get up in the morning, I'd go to work. The days I had class, I would go to class, but on the off days, I was able to carve out this perfect time of getting home, working out, cooking dinner, and studying. So probably the longest stretch I had of working out was during my MBA program. And maybe for me, it was a way to de-stress and get the thoughts of work and the thoughts of school out and channeled into a healthy way.
Good for you. I think a lot of people going through any kind of program like that, I think a lot of people would go the other way. So good for you that you kind of figured out a way to channel that. What's an adjective that your classmates would use to describe you?
Surprisingly, I ended up winning the Biggest Heart Award at the end of the MBA program, and I was shocked. I was shocked because I would think my classmates would say, "Oh, she's funny, she's outspoken," but I didn't realize the biggest heart is what I translated for me. So it's a podcast, so everybody can't see, but in my home office, I have my trophy from my MBA program, Biggest Heart, because it reminds me of like the little things that you're doing. You don't always realize the impact it has on people, but it must have had some impact for my classmates.
I guess it also says that we don't always know how people see us.
Right? Biggest heart, my jaw dropped and everyone laughed. And I just was like, I'm not a mean person, but I didn't know that was, and people came up and told me things that I had, little things that, didn't register for me as impactful. Going to the wake, she mentioned that was something that really meant a lot. Hey, your willingness to help teach me this concept that I couldn't figure out. So it means a lot. And so that's the term, or that's the word that my classmates take for me.
That's awesome.
Biggest heart.
Awesome story. And last one, the either funnest or funniest moment you remember from the program.
The funniest moment was actually on the study abroad trip. We put a Snapchat filter on Dr. Waldo where he had like long hair and long eyelashes. And for whatever reason, the entire group cracked up. I think I still have the picture somewhere on the phone. Sorry, Dr. Waldo. Probably the funniest moment. It still sticks out in my head. And so as I'm swiping, occasionally it'll come up and I'll crack up. It was a pretty funny moment.
Was it his first experience with Snapchat?
It was. And I think he started to get irritated because we just thought it was the funniest thing on earth, seeing Dr. Waldo with his long flowing blonde hair filter. I don't know why that moment sticks out in my head, but I'd say that was probably the funniest moment that I can remember.
Make sure you never take it off your phone because it'll just get funnier as you get further away.
And I can't show you, right? You have to be on the trip, so sorry.
Yeah, well, I guess everybody else will have to be on their own trip and make their own Waldo moments, right? Well, Tasha, it's so good to chat with you, and it's so good whenever you come up. I will remind you that we have a whole office full of people that volunteer regularly. If you ever need to bring the baby, they are happy to be the babysitter.
Well, thank you so much for the time. This was fun.
Thanks. See you soon.
We are so glad you could join us today and hear about the journey of yet another MBA GOAT. For me, my MBA was truly transitional, as it is for so many of our students. If you're wondering where an MBA can take you, reach out to us and let's talk about you. Email us at mba@utdallas.edu and feel free to ask for me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of yet another MBA GOAT podcast. Join us online at mbagoat.com to find episode notes, links, and more. Be sure to subscribe to yet another MBA GOAT podcast on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting app. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review. That will help spread the word about the podcast and the Jindal School's MBA programs. To learn more about the Jindal School's MBA programs, go to jindal.utdallas.edu/MBA.